Chapter 4 'Tis the Season. December 1978. Regulus sinks down on the edge of his bed and looks around his room. Not his room at Hogwarts, or the one he left behind at Grimmauld, but the one he's let himself grow into at the Potters'. He's tired. His shoulders ache from carrying his trunk, and his nose is still cold. But being in this room feels like dipping himself in a hot, bubbly bath. Tension melts away as he traces the shape of the windows and takes in the familiar scent of home. It still doesn't feel real sometimes, this life he gets to have. He believed for so long that he would never know more than a drab and dreary colors of Grimmauld. Even now, despite how much time has passed, the darkness sometimes feels like a vulture perched on his shoulder, watching, waiting. Regulus remembers it well, though he wishes he didn't. So many nights spent curled under his blanket, cradling a broken wrist, with Sirius sat next to him, reading softly to lull him into a dreamless sleep. In the morning he would wake the creature at his bedside, a gentle frown on the little house elf's face. "Master Wrist," the elf would say, holding out spindly hands. He would fix the damage, on his mistress' orders, of course, so when Regulus and Sirius appeared in the dining room for breakfast, it was as though nothing ever happened at all. These days, every morning he wakes in Potter Manor, feels like breaking the surface of dark, cold lake to breathe. There's no elf at his side, no broken bones or broken spirits. Sirius is down the hall because he doesn't have to guard him from further violence. Potter Manor is warm and colorful. Tastes of chocolate and Effie's dishes, half of which Regulus can't pronounce. Grimmauld Place is a house. Potter Manor is a home. Regulus reaches for his bag and pulls out the jar. It's only been a few days since his trip to Hogsmeade, and his frustration piles on with each new, unanswered question. He spent the train ride from Hogwarts reading the book he bought from the florist. He should have expected, but the book focuses far more on magical flowers and their enchantments than it does on all flowers. He finds lilies, daisies, petunias, roses, carnations, orchids, but not a single flower matches. He read the entire book from cover to cover and learned nothing. With a sigh, Regulus gets up to place the jar underneath his bed, tucked in the corner and covered by shadow. Somewhere he can snatch it quickly if he needs to. Close to him, within arm's reach, but out of sight should someone come snooping. "Reggie!" He startles at the voice. It's been almost 2 months since the Quidditch game. 2 months since he last heard his brother's voice calling for him. His heart leaps and he jogs out of the room, jar forgotten and flowers pushed aside for the time being. Sirius waits for him at the bottom of the stairs, arms out wide. He beams when Regulus hurries to him, but makes a soft oof when Regulus slams into him, arms around his neck, knocking him back a step. "Whoa! Hey, Reggie! Didn't expect you to actually give me a full hug." "Don't be irritating about it," Regulus mumbles, face buried in his neck. Sirius smells exactly as he always does, like home. But then something else. Regulus wrinkles his nose. "Did you just come from practice? God, you reek of sweat." Knew that moment wouldn't last. Sirius ruffles his hair and Regulus pushes him off. Let's practice before we get some time off for Christmas holidays and such. No games until the end of January, so we get a little break." "Oh, that's good. So you're free all winter break?" Sirius nods, then pauses. "Well, no, not all winter break. Just for a few days, then me and Remus are taking a trip down to Wales to visit his family. Don't worry, I'll be here for Christmas, but our portkey is that afternoon." Regulus' stomach drops. Oh, that's good. You already said that, Reggie, because it is good. Wales is pretty this time of year. Sirius narrows his eyes. Though they are brothers, Regulus has always thought of them as echoes rather than reflections. Sirius is taller, his hair longer and a little straighter, his eyes one gorgeous shade of blue. Normal. Now that Sirius is 19 and grown into his skin, Regulus sees it. Sirius is more their father, the unmistakable sign that he's an adult, that he's growing up. Regulus contrasts him in almost every way. Shorter, curls framing his face, two eyes of green and grey. It's a rarity no one lets him forget. He's growing into himself too, just differently, because he is more their mother, much as he hates to admit it. All of his angles are sharp, where Sirius is still at least a little soft, less likely to cut when touched. They are both a mix of their French-Japanese blood, though their features seem unsure on which side they want to settle. On this, at least, they are exactly the same. "Oi, snap out of it," Sirius mutters, waving a hand in front of Regulus's face. "Did you hear any of what I just said?" "No, I was thinking about how you look a lot older." Sirius makes a face at him. "I am older, Reggie, and don't you forget it, or make me feel bad about it. My knees already pop when I wake up. Can you believe it?" Regulus glances behind him and into the living room. "Is it just you?" "No, of course not. Remus and James are in the kitchen with Effie." His feet take him across the hall and through the living room before he can stop them. It's not Regulus doesn't decide he's going to move. It just happens. Like his body knows something his brain isn't ready to process. He hears voices now, too deep, male ones, and Effie's higher, gentler pitch. "Oh, Regulus, good, good. We were just talking about you." Effie smiles at him, always warm. She's wrapped in the thickest, comfiest looking turtleneck sweater Regulus has ever seen. "I was telling James that Slytherin is shaping up to be the finest it's been since I was in school, and he was telling me that the Magpie's scouts have their eye on you already." Shocked, Regulus turns to James. He regrets it the moment their eyes meet. Breath catching in his chest, heart skipping too many beats, palms gone clammy at his sides. James pops a grape in his mouth and grins at Regulus, mumbles, "Hey, Reg," in a familiar, friendly sort of way. And Regulus? Well, he wishes he would melt right through the floor and become one with the earth. James is still in his Quidditch gear, hair messier than usual and cheeks flushed. His eyes are bright behind his glasses, a spark in them that never fades. It's unfair the way his features makes Regulus's stomach somersault. Completely unaware of the small riot currently happening inside Regulus's head, James continues. "I know you are not sure which team you want to join when you are done with Hogwarts, but the Magpies are really interested in you. I told them you were Slytherin's youngest seeker when you joined the team." It takes Regulus a bit to find his words. His tongue feels like a strap of dried leather in his mouth, but he forces his voice steady and replies, "We don't have a house cap, though. Not yet." James waves his hand before popping another grape in his mouth. "Doesn't matter. That's on the captain. And from what Mom said about Slytherin's practice schedule, I think you're well on your way to taking it home. You drill them like I did with Gryffindor." Regulus's cheek felt warm. The whole kitchen is too hot, his jumper itchy and his jeans too tight. "I don't want to waste any things you taught me." "Just don't forget to have fun, yeah? My life is all Quidditch all of the time now. I love it, don't get me wrong, but I wish I had time for other things too." Something in the way James say "other things" makes Regulus panic. He can't exactly tell what it is, only that he suddenly, desperately wants to change the subject. "Are you going to Wales with Sirius and Remus?" The moment the question is out, Regulus realizes he wants James to say no. Like when you flip a coin and find yourself hoping for an outcome you didn't know you wanted before it started flying. Cold air whooshes into the kitchen, cooling Regulus's skin. With it comes Remus covered in dirt clear up to his elbows. No, he isn't coming with us, he says, running his hand under the tap water. The relief that sweeps through Regulus is frankly absurd. Fortunately for him, Remus is still talking. He is ridiculously tall, drawing attention when he speaks. Everyone is too focused on him. No one notices the way Regulus's cheeks burn for a moment. We took care of the gnomes, Effie, Remus says, scrabbling his forearms. His wand is in his back pocket, but he seems hellbent on doing this the Muggle way. Shouldn't be a problem for at least a little while. Thank you, Remus. Remus glances over his shoulder at Regulus. Sorry, I should have said hi. Bad manners. He smiles warmly, a small light in his eyes. Full moon is coming. Makes me a bit rough around the edges. You? Rough? Absurd. James laughs when Remus flicks water at him. You smell gross. Serious too. Doesn't your big fancy Quidditch team have showers? We're just so excited to see you all. James's grin is far too cheeky, and the ghost of a laugh is still on his lips when Remus finishes washing his hands. This time, he uses his wand to dry himself before slipping out of the kitchen. For a moment, Regulus thinks he might be able to disappear too. He's uneasy, standing in the kitchen alone with James, who seems content to keep popping grapes in his mouth like candy. Regulus is about to turn on his heel and head for the living room when James speaks up. Come here and have a seat, he says, jerking his chin at Regulus. Eat some grapes and tell me all about the team. Ravenclaws too. You figure out their weaknesses yet? Come here. Have a seat. Regulus feels itchy all over, a little dizzy. He chalks it up to the heat of the kitchen and not at all the way James watches him while he talks, popping grapes into his mouth every so often and nodding along, offering tips here, thoughts there, but never interrupting, listening, always listening. Somewhere in the living room, Sirius and Remus curls up on the couch and poke at the Muggle television. It was Fleemont's gift from Arthur Weasley last Christmas. A strange thing, but full of fun images. While Sirius and Remus work to get their favorite film started, Effie slips away into the house and Fleemont stays outside to tend the garden. But here, in the kitchen, James sits beside Regulus. Over time, they half face one another. They talk with their hands when they start comparing plays, discussing rankings, figuring out why Regulus sometimes lists left when he wants to go right. He's sure he's doing everything right, but sometimes it still happens. He's at a loss. It can be your technique. You're too good for that. Might be your broom, though. I'll take a look at it tomorrow if you want. James offers, popping another grape in his mouth. He's eaten an entire cluster of them by now. He swivels on his chair a little and his knee knocks against Regulus. The touch burns him right through the fabric of his jeans. James doesn't move. Yeah, Regulus croaks, suddenly desperate for water. His entire being narrows until it exists only in the spark where their knees touch. That would be great. The rest of the world falls away. James's knee stays, even as they continue their talk. Snow starts to fall outside, forcing Fleemont in, but he merely gives them both a nod before disappearing into the house. For a little while, at least, there is only him and James, and that small warm place where they touch. Regulus and Effie visit the local farmer's market on the morning of his first full day home for winter break. They walk side by side, chatting animatedly about the family's holiday plans. Well, it's mostly Effie who talks and Regulus who listens. She's bursting at the seam with excitement. All of her boys under one roof again? She simply cannot stop talking, but Regulus doesn't mind. It's cold. one of those clear days with temperatures below freezing. The air tastes of winter. It bites at Regulus's cheek, and for a moment he wishes he hadn't volunteered to help with the shopping. But then he glances over at Effie, at the smile on her face as they approach the market, the pep in her step because they all spent Christmas Eve together, and Regulus thinks the cold isn't so bad after all. Effie's boots steps confidently through the slush despite the heels on them. Her beige coat hugs her body, contrasting beautifully with her burgundy scarf. Regulus smiles to himself. It's nice that she has style, that she takes pride in her appearance but isn't allergic to color. Walburga, the she-devil that birthed him, never wore anything other than black. Objectively, she is a gorgeous woman by all accounts, but her beauty was always washed out by old-fashioned stuffy gowns without a single spark of to them. Regulus wonders idly if she would have been a warmer mother had she dared put a splash of color in their lives. Reggie, can you maybe get some fresh bread? Effie asks, stopping at a vegetable vendor with a Colombian flag proudly displayed at the tent's back. Anything with a hard crust. Sure, Regulus agrees. Meet you back here? Si, Effie says, already switching to Spanish to chat to the stall vendor. He selects bread from the fanciest looking bakery stand. 3 loaves because Monty eats it like it's his job. The sight of a hot chocolate stand is all it takes to make him realize his teeth are chattering, his nose is stiff, and his fingers aren't quite moving. He gets a cup for himself and adds a couple donuts to the order. Sirius said they might come by again later, and his love for the sugared pastry is unparalleled. Sipping on his drink, Regulus returns to Effie and helps with her bags. She's chatting in rapid Spanish with the Colombian lady. Regulus listens, but he barely catches a word. He's lived with the Potter long enough he should know more than he does, especially not with how James and Effie speak, but the best he can do is read Effie's body language and decide she's not upset, even if she sounds a bit frustrated to his ears. Shaking his head in amusement, he moves out of the way of another customer and ends up mostly bumping into a couple one stall over. He means to say, "Excuse me," but the words don't come. Instead, his brain snags on the way the man's hand sits firmly on the small of the woman's back, and on the way she leans into him like a sunflower in search of light. Swallowing, Regulus looks away. He's thinking about it again, which isn't ideal. He'd promised himself this morning he would stop. The problem is he can't. His mind is full of their niece now. They sat in the kitchen and talked about Quidditch for hours. In all that time, James never moved his leg. Regulus didn't either. Their knees remained pressed together all evening. It doesn't mean anything. James is a touchy-feely person by nature. He is always in serious personal space or clinging to Remus's shoulder. Before Peter moved to Scotland, even he would fall victim to James's need to be so close he was practically in the other person's lap. So Regulus knows it's in James' nature to touch, to be near. He knows there's nothing more to it than that. And yet... "Reggie?" "Sorry," he says, blinking up at Effie. "I missed that. Are you ready to go? I've got everything I need." They walk side by side back to Potter Manor, though this time it's quieter. Regulus is lost in his head thinking of niece and grapes and appropriate level of clumsy. He's not paying attention to Effie's curious glances or the way she seems to be waiting for him to mention the bag of donuts in his hand. "So," Effie says finally, bright hazel eyes cutting to him. She never has been fond of weighted silence. "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, but I know your 7th year can be stressful. If you need to talk, You know I'm here, right? Yes, Regulus replies, and for some reason the tip of his ears burn hot. I know, Effie. Thank you. Her smile is warm, open. It occurs to him that he could tell her about his flower dilemma. Effie has always been good at dealing with his issues. After they initially showed up to the Potters, she was the one who noticed Regulus always flinch at the sound of door. She picked up on the way he'd apologize for the smallest things, handshaking if he so much as dropped a fork in the kitchen. Once, she caught him hiding extra food in his room. It's just in case, he wanted to explain, though even that honesty scared him. Despite his lack of explanation, she let him do it, but explained the kitchen would always be open for him. All day, all night. You'll never go hungry again, Regulus, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Not in my house. Without Effie, Regulus wouldn't be as well adjusted as he is. He trusts her. He realizes with a start. Almost completely. Or at least, as much as someone like Regulus can trust another human being. But when he opens his mouth, he hesitates. What would he say? I'm coughing up flowers. Seems a simple sentence, doesn't it? And yet it sticks to the back of his teeth, weighs heavily on his tongue. Potter Manor rises before them. They are in the front garden, up the steps, through the door. Flimont greets them, takes bags to help lighten the load, and Regulus realizes he hasn't said anything at all. So, Sirius starts munching on a donut. There's powdered sugar all over his jeans and sticky glaze on his fingers. What's happening at Hogwarts? What do you mean? Regulus asks. You are getting sugar everywhere. Eat like you're a civilized person. He wrinkles his nose and makes a mental note to choreograph the sofa when Sirius leaves. Sirius waves a dismissive hand, which only makes more of a mess. He's too keen on getting gossip from Regulus to care about the white dust he's sprinkling all over. We're not there to cause mischief anymore. Who's in charge of pranks now? Don't tell me everyone's behaving. I'll cry. James snores from where he sits cross-legged by the fireplace, taking Regulus' broom apart. The broom is in pieces all around him, and if it were anyone other than James tearing it apart, Regulus would be hovering over his shoulder to supervise. As it is, it gives him anxiety to say it this way. Sometimes it feels like an extension of himself. Barty and Evan get around sometimes, he tells his brother, reaching for his cup of tea. He's so cozy he could fall asleep here, on the sofa with Sirius, the fire roaring across the large living room and a blanket over his legs. There's a couple of fourth-year Gryffindors causing some trouble, but no one has done anything half as epic as your prank with the armors. What about the water fontaines? Sirius asks casually, a bit too casually. Regulus rolls his eyes. You are undefeated, Sirius. No one could ever get close to causing as much ruckus as you did. Excellent. But I insist they keep trying. At this moment, James stands and mutters something about a missing tool before he disappears in the kitchen, through the sliding glass doors and into the garden. Regulus does his level best not to watch him leave, not with Sirius's eyes on him. Hey, Sirius mutters, nudging his arm gently to regain his attention. What else is going on? How are you coping with Newts? Everything okay? Yes, Regulus answers easily, but by the way Sirius's eyes narrow, he knows it's not enough. Resigns, he elaborates a little, hoping it will get his brother off his back. Sirius means well, but what's really troubling him isn't something he wants or feels like he can share. Exams are fine. We had a horrible one with McGonagall though. It was hard even for me, but I'm pretty sure I still got a good mark. Sirius gasps and puts a hand on his chest. Minnie, Godric, I miss her. You do realize how weird it is that you have a crush on your transfiguration professor and head of house, right? Regulus points out, eyebrows climbing to his hairline. It's weird that you have never had a crush on anyone, but I don't give you grief about it. Sirius snaps primly before flicking his hair over his shoulder. Regulus is caught off guard. He doesn't even think to tell Sirius off for how vain he is about his hair. Instead, Regulus absolutely freezes. It's all he can do to keep his eye on his brother and stop himself from glancing towards the garden. Unfortunately, Sirius notices Regulus' abrupt stillness. His mouth forms a perfect "oh," and then he's wiggling his eyebrows and leaning in. Scooting closer, curiosity and playfulness glinting in his blue gaze. "Oh, do tell." No, there's nothing to tell. Panic grips his heart, squeezes it. Briefly, Regulus wonders if he's going to cough a petal right onto the sofa cushion. The heat in his cheeks, the slight itch under his skin, they always come just before he spews. But Sirius is only curious. His face is open, understanding. This is Regulus's brother, the one person who's never failed him. Growing up, Sirius did everything he could to protect Regulus. And he was old enough, he rescued Regulus from their house, brought him to safety. He's never let him down. It's nothing, Regulus tells him slowly. He doesn't know how to explain to Sirius that he keeps trying and failing. He wants to kiss people, date them, crush on them, but it doesn't happen. Maybe there's something wrong with him. I don't have crush, but I did go on an accidental date. How do you go on an accidental date? Sirius asks, running a hand through his hair. What in Godric's name is an accidental date? I thought he just wanted to hang out and talk Quidditch. Something friends do, right? Well, he thought it was a date, Regulus admits, cheeks hitting worse than before. It was Merlin. It was so embarrassing. Barty almost passed out from laughing so hard. I think I might have really... Vaguely, Regulus registers a draft of cold air and the sound of a sliding door opening, then closing. He pulls the blanket in his lap up to his neck, burying his nose in the fabric. He can picture Jordan's face so vividly, that moment of shock and hurt immediately after rejection. Sirius half smiling at him. He reaches over to gently nudge Regulus's leg and look to entertain for Regulus' taste. But then he only says, "Ah, Reggie, what happened? Tell me." Regulus sighs, drops his head back on the cushions. He kissed me and... It's a loud crash, then skittering and rolling. Things falling on the polished wooden floorboards of Potter Manor's living room. Regulus and Sirius startle, flinching at the sudden assault on their peaceful chat. Alarmed, they look around only to find James hurriedly picking up the toolbox he must have dropped. All its contents are strewn across the floor. Sorry, the box tumbles out of his hands again. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Sirius jumps up from the sofa, goes to help him gather the tools scattered about. Regulus stays where he is. How much of that did James hear? He doesn't want James to know he's so pathetic he unknowingly agreed to a date with a fifth year, only to panic when said boy tried to kiss him. He's not an amateur. Regulus desperately doesn't want James to pity him. Go on, Reggie, Sirius calls from across the room. What happened after he kissed you? It's a shame that after so many years of surviving Grimywald Place, it will be Regulus' bare hands that strangle Sirius. Can't he see this isn't a conversation that involves James? That this isn't something James needs to hear? It's embarrassing, it's ridiculous, it's... Not much, he grits out, vague as he can be even a serious look imploringly at him, just kinda ended it there. James's hand frees. He's gripping a hammer so tightly his knuckles go white. Regulus looks away from him and curses his brother silently. Sleep with one eye open, he wants to tell him. Maybe both, just to be sure. You are going to see him again? Sirius asked, gathering a few bolts into his palm. After Christmas? Are you planning to go on a not accidental date? I'm sorry, James interrupts, voice clipped. Who are we talking about? Reggie's new crush. I do not, Regulus' nostril flare. Don't even bother sleeping. I'm going to strangle you right here in the living room. I don't have a crush. We're talking about a slithering fifth year. His name is Jordan, and he's a friend. Not even that, really. Serious, quit the dramatics. A fifth year? James exclaims, wrinkling his nose. Come on, Reg, raise your standards. That's a kid. No, it's not, Sirius protests. May I remind you that when you were a fifth year, you spent a ridiculous amount of time in broom closets, snog. James slaps a hand over his mouth, scowling. Fortunately, they are too busy to notice Regulus, who might be a second away from being sick all over the sofa. He knows. Of course he knows. James has had a fair share of partners for as long as Regulus has known him. They were never good enough for him, but it was never Regulus's place to say, was it? He's always pretended it doesn't bother him, that the beautiful girls and good-looking boys aren't permanent, so they don't matter. It's harder now. Regulus is older, and so is James. What if the next partner he finds turns out to be the one? What if James's next person stays forever? They are arguing, James and Sirius, but Regulus isn't listening. It's too hot in the living room. The fire roars too big, too loud. Shoving the blanket away, Regulus gets to his feet. His chest aches, a tickle in the back of his throat. Oh no, 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 no! He knew it would come, but not now, not here. Not with James looking at him curiously and Sirius opening his mouth to ask where Regulus is running off to. Bathroom, he mutters, and then he's sprinting up the stairs. He barely makes it to his room before a cough rips through him, like sharp nails struck over his lungs. Sirius, come on, James shouts, hand cupped around his mouth. We've been ready for 15 minutes. Remus sighed beside him, arms crossed over his broad chest. I thought he'd grow out of this at some point. Fat chance, Moons, Sirius sing-songs as his socked feet thump down the stairs. Whizzing past them towards the entrance hall, he shoves his combat boots on, jumping around on one foot and then the other. When he's finished, he puts his arms out with a flourish. All right, I'm done. I'm ready. Why aren't we leaving yet? James raps at his jaw. It's a little scruffy. He's trying it out during winter holidays. The Magpies are a great team, but they are strict too. How well they play is seconded only by how clean they look. When James joined the Quidditch League, he expected it to be all Quidditch, all of the time. And it is, but there's more to professional Quidditch than the game. Ma expected us 10 minutes ago, James grumbles, hiking his backpack a little higher on his shoulder. It's heavy with the clothes he packed for a week and a half stay at his parents'. Got everything? We don't need anything. We're coming back. It's you who wants to stay at your parents' house for some reason. Yeah, well, I'm going to be there for the next week or so. Might as well just haul it all over now. Plus, you two get the flat to yourself for a whole night. Are you really complaining? Sirius sidles up beside Remus and looks up at him with wide eye. Of course not. Moons? Not a complaint to be found. Remus pulls his lips in to fight a smile. You don't have to stay with your parents, you know? The flat is as much yours as it is ours. I know. It will be just lonely here all by myself. And Reg is all alone at my parents' house. He doesn't say it, of course, doesn't even let it linger. It drops like a stone in his mind, sending ripples out through his nerves and all the way to his fingertips. His parents were thrilled when he said he wanted to come home for Christmas, while Sirius and Remus are in Wales. Regulus hadn't been in the kitchen, off somewhere else in the giant house, so James still doesn't know if Regulus has any idea he will be in his space for a week and a half. He feels like he should have asked, "Is it okay if I'm around you now?" Something has shifted. James mulls it over while Sirius and Remus talk animatedly about the food Effie always cooks on Christmas Eve. James is distracted. He can't stop thinking of a warm knee pressed against his in the kitchen, an accidental touch that lingered too long and then stayed. He thinks of "he kissed me" and the way his stomach dropped to the floor right alongside that box of tools. Who is he kidding anymore? "Hello, my name is James Potter, and I'm the fool who's falling for my best friend's brother, except neither my best friend nor his brother have any idea, and it's best that they don't, because it will be awkward and weird, and there's no way said best friend would approve or said brother has any feelings for me and James. Are you in there?" Knuckles knock against his head, and Remus looks at him with a raised brow. "Fine. Sorry, just thinking." "Oh, it's Christmas Eve," Sirius says, poking his biceps. "No thoughts, only fire whiskey and presents and Effie's cooking, yeah?" "Yeah. Yeah, okay, you're right." The three of them links arms, and Remus, who has always been better at sidelong apparition and the least likely to splinch any limbs, drops them right at the base of short stairs that lead to Potter Manor's front porch. "Oh, I can already smell it all," Sirius says, rubbing his hands together. He hauls Remus behind him and up the stairs right through the unlocked front door and straight through the halls to the kitchen. James eases the door shut behind him, careful not to let it slam. He sets his backpack down by the small table in the foyer, kicks off his trainers, and shrugs off the layers he wears to keep out the cold. "Oh, hi, James." He spins on his heels, stumbling a little when his shock catches on the entrance rack. "Hey, Reg," he says, hands shooting out to catch himself on the wall. James isn't drunk yet, but the sight of Regulus standing at the bottom of the stairs, one hand on the banister and so relaxed, so at home here, makes him wish he had a flask of fire whiskey to drown all the nerves. He noticed the other day, Regulus is growing up. Maybe it's because James doesn't see him as often, so the difference is starker now. But Regulus is no longer Sirius's little brother. He's him. He's sharp, with beautiful edges and a soft voice, watchful eyes, almond-shaped and turned up at the corners, even when he isn't smiling. If James had to guess, he would wager his spent hours staring up at his ceiling, thinking about those eyes. One green, one gray, and they never miss a thing. The freckles dusted underneath and in between them, right across his nose. He notices it all. "What's with the backpack?" Regulus asked, jerking his chin. "Didn't you already bring your present yesterday?" "Oh, did Ma not tell you?" Regulus shakes his head. I've been in my room all day, not feeling well. I'm fine now, though. Just a little headache." "I'm going to stay for a few days. The week, actually, until Sirius and Remus are back from Wales." "Oh, why?" "The flat is lonely without anyone there. Plus, I miss my parents. It will be nice to spend some time with them." A flicker. a nearly imperceptible downturn at the corners of Regulus's mouth before a neutral expression settles back into place. They'll be happy to have you around. I miss you too, James wants to say, but Regulus is already padding down the hall and disappearing into the kitchen. He reminds James of a shadow, the way he's always dressed in black from the jumper to the socks on his feet. Sirius has always loved color, wears it in all shades beneath his leather jacket, but Regulus? Not even a little, unless it's the green and silver of Slytherin. He dresses like our mom, Sirius used to whisper to James in the great hall when Regulus would appear. I don't think he realizes he does it. It's like no matter how much time it's been since we broke free of Grimywald and that wretched woman, her claws are still sunk deepest in him. James finds his parents in the kitchen. Monty leans against the island, Sirius and Remus sitting on stools while they listen with rapt attention to his tale. More garden gnomes, it seems. An infestation, perhaps. James kisses his mother on the cheek, says, Feliz Navidad, ma, to which she replies warm, Que bueno que te la vas de pasar aquí no nosotros. Can I help with anything? He asks, nodding to the piles of food all around the kitchen. Some of it tends to itself. A knife chops carrots, a ladle stirs a pot. But he would be remiss not to at least ask. No, that's all right. Regulus is on it. As if on cue, Regulus appears in the doorway, leading down to the basement, a tray full of halakas in his arms. His brows are furrowed, concentration clear, and James doesn't miss a bit. Here, let me. I'm fine, James. I can carry it. Sure, but I can carry it better. James shoots him a grin, bringing the halakas to Effie. Besides, we wouldn't want you to hurt your arms or wrists. You are precious cargo in this house. Regulus's cheek tingled pink. I'm just a seeker. You use your arms too. Just a seeker? Aye, serious. He's just a seeker, he says. James calls, pulling Sirius's attention away from Monty. What starts in a kitchen full of affectionate bickering? What starts is a kitchen full of affectionate bickering. It's Sirius exclaiming his brother is the seeker at Hogwarts, not just a seeker. Then it's Monty pointing a finger at Regulus and telling him, There's more talent in your pinky finger than I have in my gnome-throwing hand. This makes Effie laugh, her head thrown back with a ridiculous grin on her face. A hum settles in James's bones. It feels good to be back in the kitchen, in his childhood home with his parents and friends. He sees Sirius and Remus every day, but there's something special about the 6 of them gathered around the Potter's table. It overflows with food. There's pain de jamon and pernil, halakas, which James doesn't love much to his mother's chagrin. She's also made pasticcio, because no maracuja will accept a Christmas without it. To honor their Britishness, there are roast carrots and parsnips, Brussels sprouts, and a tray of pigs in blankets. It's entirely too much food, and James knows they'll be eating leftovers for at least 2 days. It's perfect. He sits beside Regulus, not so subtly elbowing Sirius out of the way to get there. Sit next to your boyfriend, he says, nodding to where Remus sits beside Monty. I don't want to be in the middle of you two making eyes at one another the whole time. We don't make eyes at each other, Sirius argues petulant, but he sits beside Remus anyway. His cheeks are pink. Regulus fiddles with his napkin, laying it over his lap, then rearranging it again. Here, James says, reaching for his plate. What do you want? I'll get it for you. Regulus frowns at him. I can do it, James, it's fine. I know, but I'm being nice. What do you want? Regulus's brow furrow, but he relents. A little of everything, please. James piles food on Regulus's plate. then his own. He laughs at the joke from his father, a subtle jab from his mother. He and Sirius talk about the Quidditch team and grueling practices. Exhausting, but the reward is worth it, Sirius says, a round mouthful of food. The magpies are the best in the league for a reason. Chew with your mouth closed, Sirius, Regulus tells him, nose wrinkled. Sirius narrows his eyes, goes to open his mouth, but Remus claps a palm over his face. Do not do what you were just about to do, he says, using his other hand to stab at a piece of pernil. You are 19, sweetheart. He provoked me first. 19. Regulus waggles his eyebrows, clearly pleased when Sirius huffs in irritation. James is just happy to see them like this, in a place where they are allowed to laugh, where they can eat until the top button of their jeans is too tight and their stomachs are distended, where Regulus can stick his tongue out at his brother and Sirius can threaten to hex him. And rather than receive a cruciatus, they have Effie to remind them to do it in the backyard and away from the fine china. By the end of dinner, James's cheeks hurt and his stomach aches from too much laughter and food. At some point, he leans forward to reach for just one more serving of pasticcio, and without really meaning to, he spread his legs. It's a gentle bump, a soft thing, but it's unmistakably Regulus's knee that he hits. Again. James lingers, fighting the urge to make it obvious when he leans back in his chair. He's warm where they touch. It's a burn that spread up his thigh. Don't move, he thinks, biting into the layers of the lasagna-style dish. Stay there. I don't care if someone else kissed you. I'll do it better, Regulus shifts, moves his knee away, and James goes cold. That night, long after Sirius and Remus have left with a pile of presents in their arms and warm glow of their faces, James stands under the hot spray of his shower. He's a little tipsy after too much fire whiskey downed during a drinking game. Monty's suggestion, because they almost always are. He manages not to slip on the tiles when he gets out. Swears in a stream when he realizes he left his clothes in his bedroom down the hall, which means all he has is a towel wrapped around his waist. It's late, at least. So long as he doesn't bump into the walls on his way to his room, he shouldn't wake anyone. James opened the door with a flourish. Merlin, he's drunk, and blinks at the sight of Green and Grey staring up at him. His vision is blurred, despite his glasses, but not enough that he can't immediately trace the lines of Regulus's face. His fingers twitch at his sides. I was just about to knock, Regulus says, dropping his hand. I thought you might have died in there. James squints at him. Pretty eyes. I wasn't in there that long. It's been almost an hour. What? No way. Regulus nods to James's hand on the door knob. Your fingers are all pranny. James doesn't bother to look down. He's too busy staring at Regulus. Does he know his eye is James' favorite shade of green? That the other one is rain-cloud just before it bursts? Emeralds and burnished silver. It's unfair, really, that one person should be blessed with so much beauty. Sometimes it hurts to look at him. James should tell him that. Oh, that's a novel idea, actually. He should. He could tell Regulus everything. I've had a crush on you since I was 13. Oh no, not that. Too lame. He can do better. He's James Potter after all. Maybe I used to go to the library just to watch you study. The voice that sounds a whole lot like fire whiskey tells him no. That's creepy. You can do better. A valid point. Are you going to move or... James blinks, startled from his thoughts. The shower. I would like to use it eventually. Regulus tilts his head. Curls fall sideways, melting into the shadows of the corridor and the black of his jumper. Oh, right, right, of course, that. His skin is so pale, so smooth. James' eyes snag on Regulus's Adam's apple. In his mind, a flash of teeth. Come and gone so quickly he can't fully process it. The shower, he says. Merlin, he sounds so dumb. Drunk. Drunk and dumb. Regulus gives him a strange look. A little line appears between his brows, and oh, James would like to press his thumb against it. Ease it away. Soothe whatever is making him frown. With a sigh, Regulus nudges the door open a little more. You are drunk, aren't you? James grins. He feels like a kid caught with his hand in the biscuit jar. Might be, yes. That explains it. All right, well, be careful on your way to your room. Don't wake your parents. I can hear Monty snoring. Wouldn't dream of it, love. Oh, well, Regulus takes a full step back and away from him. It's too dark to be sure, but is he blushing? Maybe, but no. His voice is sharp when he speaks, not a smidge of softness to be found. Merlin, you really are drunk. I can smell it on your breath. The thing is, James hadn't realized he was leaning forward. He was too busy staring, lost in green and grey, and now he's all too aware that he's hinged slightly forward at the waist. Realizes he's just called Regulus love, which is not a thing he's ever done. Realizes he's just breathed all over Regulus's face, and he undoubtedly smells of cinnamon and whiskey and... Get it together, Potter. Get it together. Right. Well, good night, James manages, sidestepping around Regulus. Don't stay up too late. Regulus rolls his eyes and slips into the bathroom, already preparing to close the door. And James is an idiot, or maybe a masochist, or maybe some awful combination of the two. He doesn't want him to shut the door just yet. He wants another second to look at him. Another moment he can blame on the fire whiskey. Hey, Reg, it comes out halfway to a whisper. Happy Christmas. Regulus stares at him, expression unreadable. Always that mask in place, hiding everything from view. James would give anything to see it slip for even a second, if only to know what Regulus is thinking. If Regulus's thoughts are anything at all like his own. Happy Christmas, James. The bathroom door shuts and James is alone in the hallway. It's a full-blown panic. Regulus is hyperventilating by the time the lock clicks behind him. He's so stressed, so out of it that he steps into the shower with his clothes on and doesn't notice until he's under the hot stream fabric stuck to his skin. Fuck, Regulus groans, pulling at his jumper, but he has bigger things to worry about. Things like the way water droplets clung to James's absurdly sculpted chest, or how low that damn towel was on his hips. Obscene, truly. Who needs that many muscles? And it doesn't mean anything that Regulus's entire body reacted like kindling to a spark. Anyone with eyes would have. It's James Potter, Quidditch heartthrob, new sensation of the Magpies. Not a sane person in the world would be unaffected when confronted with a semi-naked James. Oh, for hell's sake, Regulus says, pinching his eyes closed. It's a bad idea. Terrible, in fact, because he sees it all over again. So much skin everywhere. With shaky hands, he turns the shower to cold, gasping when it hits him. It does the job, though. Regulus comes back to himself enough to finally peel his clothes off. dripping them on the tiled floor. They land with a wet splat that makes him flinch. He can't believe he forgot to undress before getting into the shower. Honestly. After he's done, he dries his clothes with his wand. He slips into his pajamas because he, unlike other people, remembers he's not alone in the house and has decorum. Oh, now he sounds like his mother. What a car crash of a night. Resentfully, Regulus thinks none of this would have happened if Sirius hadn't left, if he wasn't on his way to spending some time with his boyfriend's family. Grumbling under his breath, Regulus slips down the hall. Warm wood under his feet, smooth walls on both sides, shadows dancing and lengthening as he covers the distance to his room. He can hear his own breathing, and it's not as measured as he would like to be. It's fine. Just because James is staying here for a week doesn't mean they'll spend a lot of time together. James is a busy man with plenty to do, and Regulus? Well, he has to practice on his broom, which doesn't list anymore after James took it apart, and continue researching his flowers. Not to mention, he has no less than 3 essays to write before he's back in school. It will be fine. He'll be fine. It's winter holiday after all. How bad could it truly be?